All right, so we have our main.storyboard selected right now, and we can think of the main storyboard as basically our application. All right, the launch screen.storyboard further down below is simply a screen that appears while your application is loading. This is oftentimes like a company splash screen or something like that. Although I think Apple advises that your launch screen.storyboard matches your main.storyboard's first image precisely. They don't want you to have a bunch of splash screens and things like that. But obviously you can choose to ignore those guidelines if you wish. So I'm in the main.storyboard file. And on the left-hand side, I have my view controller scene. And what this basically is the view controller is the individual screen that we're displaying to our user. So whenever we say a view controller, we're talking about this screen. And in fact, we can add multiple view controllers, so we can have one screen and then have a button that transitions to a new view controller. So on this left-hand side, we always want to keep in mind how many view controllers and view controller scenes we have and make sure that we're working in the right one. So I have a view controller scene, which is the overall scene, the view controller itself, which is just this one particular view controller. We have the view, which is what they call this interface, and we have the safe area, which is basically the interface minus the title bar and the battery indicator. Now this changes based on the iPhone that you're using, so if I switch over to like an X, the safe area is a little bit different because they also include the home button. Since the home button on the newer iPhones, you swipe up to open up home. So safe area is just kind of an indication of like you probably shouldn't really put any elements here because people can't actually tap those, right? Because they're just going to be getting information about their phone or their time or battery, etc. I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the iPhone 8 Plus. Okay, so then we have the first responder, which we're not going to worry about in this class, and exit, which we're not going to worry about in this class, and those are all presented at the top of our view controller. And then we have this last one, which is the storyboard entry point, which is basically this little arrow right here. What this arrow indicates is that this is the first view that's going to load when our application loads. So if we were to make multiple views, I'll do that quickly before I describe how to actually do that. So if we had multiple views and I wanted this one to be the first view, I could actually drag that arrow over to a different view and make that my first view. I'm going to go back here, select this, and just hit delete on that view controller. So our view controller is sitting here, and this is what's going to load whenever we load up our application. Let's go ahead and hit the little libraries button up here, and we're going to type in the word label. So a label is very simply a piece of text. It's not, by default, it is non-interactive, so it's just a place to hold text. So I have label selected, I click and drag, and you can see it's attached to my mouse right now, and then I can release my label. As I drag around the scene, you're going to notice that these lines appear. These are smart guides, which help me line up my label with the center or with the sides, etc. So I'm just going to line it up to the center and release. And we can see on the left-hand side we have label, and it has a little L icon, and our label is now in our scene. We can edit the text by simply double-clicking it and saying title or something like that. Move that around. Great. So we've added a label. Let's go ahead and open up the inspector panel. So I'll just click this to open up the inspector panel, and I will select my label, and I'm going to go to the attributes inspector, which is the one most commonly used, and it's the little arrow pointing down. So we have a couple different options. We have the type of text, which plain basically means is it just normal text. Attributed means that you're going to have a lot more options to use. I'm just going to stick with plain for now. Below that, we have the actual content. So this is the content. If I hit return, it'll dynamically change. We have the color. We have the font, which can be edited by simply clicking this little T button. That'll pull up a bunch of different things that we can mess with. If we want to adjust the font, we're not going to worry about dynamic type for now, but I will say dynamic type is almost certainly used by everybody. I think there was a statistic that just came out that it's like 95% of users have dynamic type enabled on their devices. So we'll get into that a little bit more later. The alignment of the text, how many lines of text we want to have, so we can have multiple lines that we add the content to. We can also reduce those lines down. Whoops. How different pieces are truncated or changed, how it looks whenever it's tapped, does it have a shadow or not, and all these other modes. The alpha, which is basically the opacity of the particular object. So there's tons of different things we can change in here. Let's go ahead and add a button. I'm just going to type in button. So a button is a clickable piece of text. It can also be replaced with an image. It has many of the same functions. I'm just going to leave it as the default for now. And I'm also going to show you a couple other things within here. So I just hit the little X button. There's a text field, slider, switch, all kinds of different objects that are kind of pre-built for you to use. So with our button and with our text label now added to the scene, and we can easily select them over here on the left-hand side, I'm going to connect these to a piece of code in the next video, and we'll start creating some cool code with that.